at their small wooden tables shaping orecchiette. A coil of dough, a short knife, the practiced press and flick of a thumb, and then another perfect little ear lands on the board. The first time I stood and watched, the door behind one table was opened. The radio was murmuring, and the dusting of flour caught in the sun like confetti. The woman working looked up, smiled, and gestured for me to try. I'll confess that my first 3 attempts were disasters. On the 4th, my thumb finally understood what my eyes had been trying to learn: press, drag, and turn. She nodded once as if to say, "Now you've got it," and she went back to her rhythm. That's Bari, tradition alive enough to be taught right there on the street. A short stroll brings you to the Basilica di San Nicola, Romanesque and resolute since the 11th century, built for the relics of St. Nicholas. Yup, it's this exact same saint whose story becomes Santa Claus. Catholic and Orthodox pilgrims both still come. The Cattedrale di San Sabino feels lighter, a bit more contemplative. And then there's the Norman Swabian castle, the Castello Svevo, anchoring the old town to the sea. Walk to the lungomare at sunset with locals on their passeggiata, and the city does that southern Italian magic trick. It slows you down until you're walking at the speed of conversation. Now, Bari's food is the through line. Start with focaccia barese, deep, olive oil rich, and studded with cherry tomatoes and oregano, and finished with coarse salt. I love grabbing a square from panificio fiore and eating it still warm when the edges caramelize it a little and the oil perfumes your fingers. For a snack, panzerotti, golden fried crescents stuffed with mozzarella and tomato. Messy by design and joyfully so. In the evening, look for scagliozze, which are little squares of fried polenta served in paper cones. They're simple, salty, perfect with a glass of cool wine or even a beer on a warm night. And if you want Bari's cult pasta, order spaghetti all'assassina, assassin's spaghetti, which is cooked directly in spicy tomato sauce until it scorches in spots. Smoke, sweetness, and heat all in one pan. Seafood is a birthright here in Bari. Down at the old fish market by the harbor, locals still eat raw shellfish with lemon for breakfast. Mussels, razor clams, sea urchins in season, shrimp that taste like the sea. Later in the day, sit for riso, patate e cozze, the layered bake of rice, potatoes, and mussels, and taste how briny sweetness and starch knit together. And then, without a doubt, the dish that tastes most like Bari to me is orecchiette alle cime di rapa. So, you bring a pot of salted water to a boil. Drop in the tender tops of the turnip greens. 5 minutes, then add the orecchietti to the same water so the pasta finishes cooking with the greens. And then in a wide pan, warm a generous pour of that super spicy pugliese olive oil with 2 smashed cloves of garlic and a couple of anchovy fillets until they melt. A pinch of pepperoncino if you like heat, and I definitely do. Drain the pasta and greens, reserving some of that emerald cooking water, and toss everything in the pan, adding splashes of the cooking water until the oil turns glossy and coats every little ear. Off the heat, finish with a ribbon of raw oil. And then pour yourself a glass of crisp Verdecca or maybe a Bombino Bianco, both local Pugliese wines, if you want something a touch rounder and floral. And if you want to try to make pasta by hand, my YouTube video, and I'll include a link for it in the show notes on how to make cavatelli and the recipe on my flavorofitaly.com website will get your hands moving in the right rhythm. And once you learn it, you'll look back at those tables in Bari Vecchia with an even deeper appreciation. Now, let's talk about how to get there because the logistics shape your trip. Of course, as I said, from the US, that new Newark Bari nonstop begins May 1st, 2026, and that's 4 times a week. But until then, you'll probably enjoy flying into Rome and taking the fast train to Bari. It's about 4 hours and a little bit, center to center. Have a coffee at Termini and stroll off at Bari Centrale, already right in the city. Or from Naples, the trains vary with line works on the corridor, but figure 3.5 to just over 4 hours on good schedules. And some coach runs can be faster at off-peak times. Within Puglia, regional trains make the coast easy. Bari to Polignano a Mare can be about 20 minutes, or Bari to Monopoli, 25-30, or Bari to Lecce, the gorgeous Lecce, is commonly about an hour and 20 minutes to an hour and 40 on the faster trains. For Matera, the simplest is the direct bus from Bari. And remember that Matera is in a different region, Basilicata. And a lot of people get confused because the two regions kind of wind within each other, and you hardly know that you've gone from Puglia into Basilicata. But the simplest is the direct bus from Bari, and it's about an hour and a bit depending on the departure, while the regional train via Altamura is slower and requires a change. And I'll tell you what I suggest is driving. Driving is delightful if you want freedom. Distances are short, signage is clear. Just be careful of the ZTLs, which is restricted traffic within historic centers of cities, and park outside of the city center. But driving is wonderful. The other question I get all the time is which towns are day trips from Bari and which ones deserve an overnight? Okay, let's do this cleanly. Polignano a Mare is a day trip. And here, you're here for the beauty, for the cliffs, coves, and that instant Adriatic blue. The trains are frequent, fastest runs under 20 minutes. So have a coffee above Lama Monachile, a boat into sea caves if the water is calm, a great seafood lunch, and you're back in Bari with time for a passeggiata. Monopoli is a day trip. Sometimes you can pair it with Polignano. Smaller, a touch sleepier with a working harbor and sandy coves just south of town. 10 minutes farther down the tracks from Polignano, so it's easy to do both if you start early. And then Trani is a day trip north. The waterfront cathedral right on the sea is one of Italy's most photogenic churches. And the harbor is lovely for a late lunch. Another great town is Alberobello. It's a day trip or a slow overnight. You'll find UNESCO-listed trulli everywhere you look. And day trips work well if you go early or late to dodge mid-afternoon tour buses. If you care about photography and atmosphere, an overnight pays off. The cones glow after dark and the lanes are quieter. Then Locorotondo and Martina Franca.